Right, so now we can move on to walking into the shot and getting our stance and our setup as neat as it can possibly be. So bear in mind that we all do things a little bit differently in terms of setup and our stance down on the shot, but getting things as neat as they can possibly be at this stage is really important because, as I say, this is our whole foundation for building our game on. So let's have a look at the two main ways that we can stand when playing snooker shots and why one is a little bit different to the other. So in the modern game, we've got two ways of standing now, two main ways. The first way is to stand quite square to the shot, so you're facing the line of aim, and the other way is to stand a little bit more side on in the traditional way, and that's the way the players used to do it more in the 80s and 90s. So let's have a look at those two different stances then. So the modern way, the way a lot of the professional players now stand, is by placing the heel of the right foot on the line of aim. So you can see that I've walked into the shot by placing my heel of my right foot on the line of aim. My left foot is parallel to that line and a little bit in front, about half a foot further in front. And then I can get down to the shot, keeping this right leg straight. So you can see that if I was to stand up straight, I'm pretty much facing the line of aim, the line of the shot that I'm actually playing. So that's the modern way to stand. The traditional way of standing is to have the right foot going more across the line of the shot. So the line of aim is now going through the centre of my foot, but my right foot is pointing away from the line of aim. My left foot goes about shoulder width apart and parallel to that line again. And then if I was to stand up straight, I'm actually facing about 45 degrees away from the line of the shot. And that's the way the older players in the 80s and 90s used to stand. Now, neither one of those stances is particularly better than the other one. What you'll find amongst the modern day professional players is that most will stand quite square to the shot, and that's really just because Steve Davis changed the way players stood in the 80s. He was the one that really started to get a little bit more square to the shot, and then a lot of the modern day players followed that pattern. So Ronnie O'Sullivan, he stands square to the shot, Neil Robertson square to the shot, Mark Selby square to the shot. So a lot of the modern day players will stand like that. Sean Murphy, there's another one. So let's have a look at how we walk in and form both of those stances then. Okay, so I'm standing up behind the line of the shot here, and you can see I'm doing exactly what we talked about earlier. I'm a right-handed, right-eye dominant player, so my right foot is already placed on this line of aim. So before I even approach the shot, I'm lining it up by having my right foot on this line, leaning over slightly, and that puts my eye exactly where it needs to be to sight this shot correctly. Now, how do I know how far away I need to be from this white ball? I do that by holding the cue out in front of me. So when you're first learning, obviously the longer you play, I feel like now I've got so much experience that I don't need to hold my cue out in front of me. I can just tell the distance between the white and my body because I've just played so many shots. But when you're first starting to do this, and this is exactly what I did, I would use my cue to measure the distance between the white and my body. So I hold the cue out in front of me. You can see I've got a little bit of a gap from the tip of my cue to the white ball, and then a little bit of a gap from my cue to my body there, and that gives me about the right distance. So like I say, my right foot is already on this line. I've leaned over slightly to get a good look at this line of aim, and now I need to walk in. So I need to do my walk in, so placing the heel of my right foot, I've just took one step forward with my right foot, one step forward with my left foot, and then I'm going to get down and go into the shot. So let's try and form that stance then. So little step with my right foot, with my left foot, and then I'm down into my stance there. So I took 2 steps down into my stance, and then I can play the white up and down the spots. And the white should, if you get it right, come back and hit your Q-tip without you moving around. So let's just recap that. I'm standing up behind the shot. I've got my cue out in front of me. My right foot's already on the line because I'm right eye dominant. I'm leaning over slightly just to make sure I've got my eye behind that line. So I see that as nice and straight. Take my 2 steps in, right foot, left foot, get down onto my shot, and then I can play the shot, keeping nice and still. So you can see from my feet here, and again that's come up nice and straight, back up and down the spots. And you can see what's going on with my feet here is the heel of my right foot is on this line, and what's incredibly important is you don't need to worry too much exactly where the foot points. You don't want it pointing over there like that, you've gone very side on. but you don't have to point it absolutely along the line of the shot. If you want to turn it out very slightly, just to take some of the strain off the back of your knee, that's absolutely fine. So that's what you'll see Ronnie O'Sullivan does. So Ronnie will have a slight turn out of his foot and the left foot as well, just to make sure that the legs are comfortable. Now the other thing to remember and look at here is, what about if you're right-handed but left eye dominant then? So just like we looked at before, if I was to now start with my right foot on the line of aim, being a left eye dominant player, it puts my left eye a long way away from this line of aim, so you're having to really lean over and it's a bit uncomfortable to get the eye to see the line of the shot properly. So what I always advise players to do is do it more in the middle of your body. So by doing it this way, my left eye is now much closer to this line of aim. But what is important is, once you walk into the shot, I still want this right foot to go very close to this line of aim here. So whether you do it in a traditional stance with the line going through the middle of the foot, or the new modern stance with the line, with the heel placed on the line of the shot, you still want to try and get that right foot placed on the line. So you'll start off the distance like we found earlier here. So it's in the middle of my body. And then when I walk in, I concentrate. It's difficult to do at first, but you've got to concentrate on your head and not what your feet are doing. So I've got to take the slightest side step now with my right foot, then the left foot's going shoulder width apart, and then I can do the same thing, slide into my shot and play the shot. So I started with that line slightly to the side of, with my right foot slightly to the right of that line of aim to put my left eye where it needs to be. But then as I get down, I want to concentrate on my head, try and let the feet go where they need to go naturally, and get yourself down onto the shot. So it takes a bit of practice to obviously place the feet without looking at them. When you first start trying to do this, what I find with a lot of players is you'll really concentrate and then they end up almost placing the foot, placing the other foot, and the head's moving about from side to side. So as you're doing your walking, the head goes one way, then it goes the other way with the left foot, and then it goes back to the line of aim. What we're trying to concentrate on is keeping our head really straight and keeping it down on that line of aim all the way down. So I'm just going to do that once more in the middle of my body. So I've got that line there, and then it's my head I concentrate on not moving. You can see straight down into my shot, and then I can play the shot, and that should still come up and down nice and straight. The second way I could do it is exactly the same. Find my distance here from the white ball to my body, so I've got the right distance. And then now I'm going to walk in by going slightly this way, and then that way like that. And then that's my old traditional style stance now. And I could stand like that and play the shot. And the white should come back up and hit your Q-tip again. So both those stances, even though they're a bit different because the other one I'm going to stand a little bit more side onto the shot, they're both just as effective. And like I always talk about in my YouTube videos, what's incredibly important is that you do things consistently. So whichever one of these stances feels best for you and you decide on, I would then stick with that stance, and you do that consistently on every single shot. So any shot that I approach, I'm always approaching it with the same distance from the cue ball to me. Then I do my 2 steps in, get down on the shot, and then I can play the shot, keeping nice and still. But it's always exactly the same approach to every single shot. Same as if you did it with going a bit more side on. So let's just do that one more time. So we're in that position. But then if I stand a bit more side on, what's important is I would do that same stance on every single shot. Now let's look at this in more detail then. So I'm placing the heel of my right foot on line, the foot's pointing out very, very slightly, left foot's about shoulder width apart, a little bit in front. Now this right leg always remains straight, so no matter which stance you use, you try and keep this right leg straight because it just offers extra stability. That's why players started doing it. It means that when you're down on a shot, you feel very solid, like there's no movement in this stance, so you couldn't be pushed over one way or the other. It's exactly like someone if they were about to fight and you would form a nice solid stance. We're trying to do exactly the same thing with snooker. We're forming a stance where we feel like the feet are placed, and if someone was to try and push us, we're nice and solid because this leg is locked. Now, if you can't absolutely lock this leg, you will see some professionals put a slight bend in there. So you'll sometimes see Ronnie O'Sullivan and Ding Junhui have a slight bend in that leg. But for most players, they'll lock that leg. So Neil Robertson, Sean Murphy, Judd Trump, Ronnie O'Sullivan will all lock that leg nice and straight. Now this left one, you'll have a bend in this, and this is important because it helps you to twist into the shot. So by bending onto that left leg slightly and putting some weight just slightly through that left leg, you're twisting into the shot nicely. So you can see I've got that nice bend in that left leg, the right leg's straight, and that's going to put everything exactly where I want it to be, and then that should come back nice and straight and just about hit my tip there. So that's how you want to stand. Those are the finer details of it, that you're placing the feet, and then I'm kind of turning up my hips very slightly, turn up my hips, get some weight slightly on that left one as well, and then play the shot up and down the spots. Now the last thing to think about here is you don't want to end up too far away from the shot that you feel like you're leaning forward onto the table. You don't want to end up too close that you feel like the leg is leaning back the other way. You're trying to find the right distance so your leg is almost vertical when you're playing the shot. Now you haven't got to be too precise with that, but again, these are all the little things that you just try and get as neat as possible. So you try and find the distance where you've just got that right leg about vertical, and it's not too far, not too close. Doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but as long as you just find that setup there where it is nice and neat and it feels comfortable to you, that's what you want to try and achieve. Now, remember here that when you first start adjusting your stance and standing properly, most people when they play snooker do not stand in the way that you would see professionals playing, in the correct way. So when you first do it, it can actually feel quite uncomfortable. In order to keep this right leg completely straight, it puts a lot of strain on the back of the hamstring muscles here and all the tendons, and it can really pull at first when you're not used to doing it. So I often tell people, if you feel a bit of a pull in that leg, you're probably starting to do it right. So at first, remember, it doesn't necessarily feel absolutely comfortable. You're putting your body in a very unusual position when you form a snooker stance and play snooker. So when you're not used to doing it and doing it in the right way, it might feel a bit unusual, but it doesn't take long before you get a bit more flexible and it starts to feel nice and comfortable when you're down on a shot. So if you did enjoy this video, remember to give me a thumbs up. Also, if you're new to the channel and you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. That just really helps me to keep this content coming regularly. For anyone that's interested in any personal one-to-one sessions, just drop me a message and I'd love to help with your game. But as always, everybody, stay safe. Catch you in the next one. Cheers.